Corali, Fajar.
Before anything else is said, I must preface that this film is more or less essential viewing for most people. If you're a film fan, you'll get a lot out of it. It's not as accessible as other films I'd loudly recommend, as it's very squeamish, very disgusting and f***ed up, but at the same time, it's terrific and absolutely worth your time. Everyone over 18 should see this, that's a good way of putting it. For those who like The Thing or the works of David Cronenberg, you'll probably adore this film. When it comes to body horror, it reaches the same creative heights as those films. This is truly a triumph of the subgenre, I can't recommend this enough. Just go see it, just go see it, just go see it, just go see it. Even if you don't like it as much as I do, you'll still value the experience, I guarantee you. But anyhow, now for the review. This film is directed by French filmmaker Coralie Fajar, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, whose previous works I haven't seen. It's a body horror starring Demi Moore set in a satirical Hollywood world in which Moore plays a dried up celebrity fitness video instructor. Her stardom relies heavily on her sex appeal, which proves to be an issue due to her middle age. She's no longer the petite young woman that she was, and so her success is dwindling. It's the typical spat out of Hollywood story. In show business, aging hits women a lot harder than it does men, as women are expected to remain beautiful and youthful forever. Getting older is a brutal stage in an actress's career, and we're all familiar with this concept. So faced with this crisis, Elizabeth Sparkle, played by Moore, comes across a strange substance that promises to create a younger version of herself, an alternative body she can inhabit instead of her older one. Of course, she takes the substance, a new version of herself is created, and she has to spend 1 week in each body at a time, so at the end of each week she switches over. So she goes 1 week as a middle-aged woman and then another week as a beautiful 20-year-old up-and-comer. And from that point forward, things start to turn awry, but that's all the information I'll disclose for now. Again, it's quite a familiar premise, and it's clear what it's driving at. From moment one, you know the kind of messages the film is trying to promote, and yet that didn't matter to me. The execution is everything, and the execution in this was fantastic. Immediately I knew it was a critique of Hollywood, a satirical tale about the over-sexualization of women and the stigmatization of aging. Again, it's a very common theme that's talked about a lot. At least thematically, you know exactly what this film is going for right off the bat, and this usually is something that can serve as a problem for me, as the film may be predictable. And yet it wasn't, because this movie is so entertaining. It isn't just about the messages, it's also about the body horror as well as the psychological horror. The direction is the most unique thing about this movie. The cinematography is gorgeous, yet ominously uncanny. Frequent wide shots of disconcerting liminal spaces, making this world feel alien and hollow. The wide-angle lenses used to create these intrusive fisheye close-ups of intimidating characters. In these moments, the film feels like it's invading your personal space. The sound design is the best of any film this year. It's loud and exaggerated in this unapologetically noticeable way. Tiny objects and movements are given these monumental, daunting sounds. The action of a cocktail stick stabbing an olive is given the sound of a mighty metal lance piercing a rock. These violent sounds create an ever-present atmosphere of sinister threat and cruelty almost, as if this reality is inherently malevolent and vicious. The movie's audio invades the ears with sounds that are at different times oppressive, intrusive, grotesque, but at all times deviously detailed. The auditory experience of this film is its own beast entirely. Without this sound design, this movie would not be the same. It would not possess that precise identity, it would not have that ferocious atmosphere. The level of overtness that these sounds are given borders into comedic territories, which is also quite by design, as in many ways this is an absurdist comedy. This entire film takes place within a clear hyperreality, which not only creates this great sense of uncanniness, but it also lends more feasibility to the ridiculousness of the plot and the characters. The very premise is so silly, but at no point do you question it, because the film has tactfully established its own satirical reality. reality. This world is populated with cartoonish Simpsons-esque characters that don't come over as obnoxious or crass, because they are consistent with this aforementioned whimsical tone. Dennis Quaid plays a walking caricature of a sleazy Hollywood producer who's obsessed with sexy women and whose name is literally Harvey. But again, because of the rules of this reality, as well as Quaid's hilarious portrayal, it never came over as trite to me. This is a vein of storytelling that I typically don't go for, as it oftentimes comes over as insistent or mean-spirited, a straw man argument type of deal. With this, however, I never got the sense that the filmmakers had this insistent axe to grind. More so, they were just creating a symbolic representation of male depravity in Hollywood. It also helped that they looked like they were just having fun with it too, not taking themselves too seriously. Again, the film is clearly taking place within its own absurdist reality. The origin and context around the substance itself is thankfully left vague. There's no dumb exposition, it's cryptic and minimal in this odd Lynchian fashion, which was fine for me. I didn't want a convoluted explanation as to where it came from, because that wasn't the focal point of the movie, that just wasn't important. The performances given by Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley are both quite counter-traditional to your average film protagonist. For one, they don't actually say that much, at least in the beginning, so much about them is told visually. This idiosyncratic behaviour is again consistent with the Lynchian tone. I will say that at least at first, these two characters leaned more towards concepts than people. They were there with the main objective to communicate an idea rather than come over as sympathetic. Now, this may have proved to be a problem if the film hadn't gone in the directions that it ended up going in. As the film unfolds, it leans so hard into this comedic absurdism that having characters like these was appropriate. In many ways, this film has the sensibilities of a student film, which may sound quite damning, but I enjoyed it all the same. In fact, I appreciated these experimental aspects. There's a lot of symbolism involving egg yolk, which are implemented to be visual representations of the core ideas and themes of this film. It's metaphorical in a basic way, but I still enjoyed it for how neat the imagery was. I didn't mind its simplicity. I also loved the opening shot and the poignancy of it, a Hollywood star being cemented in the ground and then over time being forgotten and disregarded as it slowly withers and cracks. The whole premise itself is kind of like a Black Mirror concept, but just executed with maximum fun and creativity. It could have been trite, it could have been one note and annoying, but it wasn't. Demi Moore gave a fantastic performance. It's visceral, but more importantly, it's hilarious. She does some kooky things in this film and I was always laughing. I'm glad this film had tons of comedy in it because I think it made the concept translate on screen better. Again, it wasn't taking itself too seriously and it had the self-awareness to know how crazy and bombastic it was. In fact, a lot of the comedy derives straight from the sheer horrific insanity of the movie's events, similar to an Evil Dead type of scenario. When I compare this as a body horror to The Thing or The Fly, I do not do so lightly. At least on a technical level, it cannot be denied that this film is a staggering accomplishment in practical effects. It continuously surprises you with the stuff it shows you, it continuously ups the ante and surpasses your imaginations. Again, if you're a fan of squeamish body horror, you need to see this film immediately. I'm not going to delve too deeply into the themes or messages of the film, but all I'll say is that it's my favourite kind of allegorical storytelling, that being 99% told visually and practically. There's a profound message about self-love buried in there, a tragic tale of succumbing to self-hatred and the grim consequences of such an idea. It's a poignant film that pits two generations against each other in this grotesque wrestling match for survival and attention. It implores us to not perceive aging as something that is inherently problematic or inferior. It's a disgusting personification of self-resentment and self-destruction. The film places great emphasis on the horror of inflicting awful damage upon oneself. It's a great showcase of a specific female dichotomy. Ultimately, for me, it was about the harm you can wreak upon yourself if you don't value your own person, if you don't value every aspect of your own person. Again, go see it, please, right now. This is practically Demi Moore's Birdman, as it's very relatable to her position in Hollywood, I'd imagine at least. It's honestly really cool that she did this. It's a great role for her. It's funny because I didn't actually know that much about her up until quite recently, because a few weeks ago I rewatched A Few Good Men, which is a really good film, and she's in that, and I think that and Margin Call are the only films I've seen her in. But when I watched that, I was told that she was kind of a brief heartthrob from the 90s and sort of faded into obscurity afterwards. So it's really nice that she's returning with this film and it's telling this particular story. It's just awesome.
And remember to fucking subscribe.
Closing comments, this film is fucking disgusting. It will put you off food, it will put you off sex, it will put you off the female body if you're a straight guy, or a lesbian girl of course. It will make you feel assaulted. I felt quite violated afterwards. Yeah, it's fucked up and it's gross, but it's awesome, so go watch it now. Special thanks to the patrons. Thank you DF, thank you Mason Lydon. You two are absolute legends. Thanks.